Welcome to the Unbound Chaplain. Today we are continuing our exploration of the Garden of Eden story, focusing on a question this story has generated for so many of us. Why would God put a tree in the garden if Adam and Eve weren't allowed to eat from it? Why would God tempt or test them? We begin our exploration of this question in a community of Israelites living in Babylon as prisoners of war. The Garden of Eden story comes from this community struggling to make sense of their tragic fall from glory. A glory which began hundreds of years earlier when God gathered together on Mount Sinai the recently freed Hebrews and declared them to be God's holy people, gifting them with the divine purpose to liberate the oppressed and free the enslaved, to protect and serve the powerless. As scripture shows us, over time Israel had forgotten and even perverted its calling. Rather than using its resources to liberate and free the poor and powerless, Israel was using its resources to increase its own wealth and to increase its power. And it was oppressing and enslaving the poor and the powerless in the process. How did the Israelites stray so far from their divine calling? This is what they are pondering from the exiled lands of Babylon. And the answer lies in the Garden of Eden, in a man, a woman, and a tree. According to the Garden of Eden story, the first human was created to protect and serve the garden and its non-human inhabitants, to aid the human in its work, to ensure that this work was a joy rather than a burden. God provided the human with everything it needed, including an abundance of fruit-bearing plants and trees. But there was one tree, just one, from which the human could not eat. We hear the story and we ask some version of a question we've been asking our whole lives. Why can't they eat from the tree? Why can't we eat from the tree? Why can't we have what we want, especially when it is right in front of us? And why does God tempt and test? These questions are illuminating because they expose our assumption that the tree should be for us. And they call into question God's character. Is God kind or cruel? Does God prefer dangling carrots or planting them? Friends, perhaps God did not create the tree to tempt or test Adam and Eve. Perhaps God created the tree to feed and shelter the animals living in the garden. Perhaps the tree was off limits to the humans simply because it was not for them. One wisdom in this story, a wisdom garnered through Israel's own painful experience, is that a self-serving belief system, personal or communal, will always lead us away from our God-given purpose and will lead us into a spiritual and perhaps even physical exile. Rather than asking why God would create a tree to tempt or test, we should be asking something altogether different. And I'll leave you to ponder what a better question might be. Until next time, may you be blessed with the gift of discernment, the discernment to know your purpose, and the discernment to know what is and is not for you.